there's always positives and negatives on every project. So,
Right.
to me, it's not either a deal killer or a deal, maker. I mean, this is a definitely improved plan from the first plan we saw. Um, the Durkee Street flow is still an issue to me. Um, Making that one way and narrowing it as much as they are talking to gain just a few parking spaces, um, that just doesn't work from any practical point of view that we look at. Um, I am still unclear as to the net parking impact for the entire city center area. And I'm looking at the entire city center, not just Turkey Street. Um, and we can't end up with just net zero because we are actually increasing the demand when you look at the number of apartments that we're adding, when you look at the commercial space that we're adding. Um, I think we need to have, and I don't know what the number is, I don't know what the magic number is, but we do need to have a net gain of parking in the, when this is all said and done. Um, and there again, to me, that's not a deal breaker, but it's something that I think, and this is, I guess, the city is the applicant, but it's something that needs to really be addressed. And I'm not clear that, I'm not sure that it isn't addressed, but I'm not clear that it is addressed. So I think maybe at best, the best I can say is the communication on what the total impact on the city center parking has not been sufficient. The new plan improves access to the river corridor from, and the river walk from the original plan. And that I think is important, not just to the city, but to the county as a whole. So that is definitely a positive. And quite frankly, the renderings that they show, the building is quite attractive. And I think when all is said and done, if, the various city boards holds Prime's feet to the fire, this can be an asset to the city. But, some of these concerns, still need to be addressed. I, for one, am not sure, and maybe when we discuss this further, how we should when we take our final vote on it, I'm not sure whether we should approve or disapprove or call it a local issue. I'm still not clear on it. While overall, I like the idea of doing something with this parking lot other than just having it sit as a sea of asphalt for, for eternity. And I think that this can be an asset done right. I'm not sure that my questions are answered enough fully to say let's approve it. But then on the other hand, I'm not sure that with so many of the negatives from the earlier submittal, I'm not sure I want to disapprove it either. And I don't know. I'm hoping that when I hear from the other board members that that I can come to a conclusion on this. And I'm done.
Okay. Who would like to be next? Frank?
Yeah, my only concern, and it falls on the lines of what you just spoke about, is the off-street parking in the wintertime. They are, I mean, if you go downtown at any given time and look at that parking lot now, there's a lot of cars being parked down there constantly, and they're losing a lot of those spaces. my concern is what's going to happen to the tenants that live in that downtown area that have cars that are going to have to take them off the streets and find a place to park them when there's snow removal. I mean, I think that is an issue for not just the tenants, but it's also an issue for the landlords. And I can understand why they're so concerned about losing so many parking spaces. And I don't think Prime really addressed it that much. You know, that's my take on it.
Okay. Lou?
Hey, thanks. First of all, I think this is not a local issue. I don't agree that we should simply say this is a local issue and push it to the city, because it has too wide a county impact, and the access of the whole county to the public services, it's just too important part of the town to be called a local issue. And Tom, I hear you that they did improve from the first draft, and I do agree with some part of it, but there are still too many negative impact on the county level. I think we're voting on the county impact, right? This is the county planning board. And a few things that the plan failed to address concerns me. And I think one of the main thing I still from the first meeting is my big concern is the exclusion of public in this design, in this plan, in the site plan, this project, because mixed use should not only be limited to residential and commercial, and with so much concern on the public in terms of parking and actually many other public issues, I don't see this project being a positive asset, because once it's done, it's done. This is the biggest concern I have. Once it's done and the public access is lost forever for that part of downtown. And I do hope the parking lot doesn't sit as asphalt forever, eternity, but at the same time, we want to have a project that has a positive countywide impact. The flow on Durkee Street, I agree with you. I don't think it's gonna work. Not only because of narrowing the street to gain a few parking space, but also the negative impact on the adjacent properties. There is a I was trying to locate loading dock on the other side of the street, and if this is converted into one way and one lane, it's not gonna work at all for the other side of the street. So while recognizing some improvements from the first draft, I still don't see this site plan as positive countywide impact yet in its current form.
Okay. Anyone else? Tim?
Yeah,
Please, go ahead.
I also believe that this is a countywide impact, again, because of the Plattsburgh being the seat of the county. Social services is right across the street. Many patrons of government essential services are downtown Plattsburgh. And you know, I think out of all the stuff that we have voted approval or disapproval on in the past, this has the greatest amount of impact that we've probably seen, other than just being within 500 feet of a county roadway or something like that. You know, again, I'll start with some positives. They have done some improvements from the first plan. They took away that street entrance for the underground parking, which would have crossed over a sidewalk. So I think that's an improvement. So, you know, I do also want to see something happen downtown with this grant money. I want to see growth for Clinton County as a whole. So I definitely am a pro-development type person, but it's got to be done right. And I do think this plan does still fall a little short because we still have a lot of questions about parking. Like Frank mentioned, I have a concern too with winter parking. I work downtown, and I know in the winter when the streets aren't completely plowed, you can't even see the white stripes on the side streets. So really, the parking is drastically cut in half almost because people are just parking all over the place. One of the things that also concerns me a lot about the project is the 50 parking spaces that they've set aside as public spaces, but it's privately owned. I don't understand why the city didn't really just retain that as their own parking lot. Because is there anything, saying the overflow from those apartments aren't going to use it? Are the city police going to enforce that parking area just like they do the other parking lots, even though the city doesn't own it? I'm not 100% sure on that. But that whole thing just concerns me that it's a privately held public parking spot that's going to be eventually paid parking. Anyway, so I do have concerns over the winter parking, the private parking lot aspect of it, Durkee Street being a one-way. I don't see how that's going to work either, Tom. I think it's too narrow, and like you mentioned, there's a lot of businesses that use it. Deliveries constantly down there. I just don't know how that's going to work with trucks backing in, backing out into the street, blocking that one-way traffic. And
Being recorded.
I also just think it's nice to see that there is some improvements to public space, but again, I don't think it's gone far enough. It's really a big apartment complex that you have to kind of walk along the side of, and I don't know if that's really a welcoming public park space for anybody to be in someone else's backyard practically. But like I said, those are some of my main concerns. I do feel it's a county-wide impact. I think the parking is still a big concern, as we heard from many people from the public and our own board. I do want to see something there as well. I mean, a parking lot's a parking lot. They've already started working on that Arnie Pavone parking lot on Margaret Street. So I want to see something, but I just don't know if this plan has gone far enough for us to say approve, and then it is what it is for good, and we're potentially inhibiting other growth in the city, I feel like, with this one massive project. So that's kind of where I stand.
Okay. I can't see Gary or Steve or Randy. So does any of them want to speak?
Steve is saying he's good.
Okay.
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. As far as what I've been listening to, and I feel that as far as this one way, to me, since we've been talking about it, I've been concerned about it, especially like for when there's going to be trailers or somebody unload, and that they need to unload, or it's going to be only one way. And I know there's like at the other end, there's like a doctor's office there, and I've had to go down there at different times when and it's both ways right now at this point. And still, it's hard to find a place sometimes to even park where the doctor's office is down there in that area. And when you're talking about one way and then you're narrowing it down, to me, this is one of the biggest issues as far as what I've been concerned about since I've been talking about it. To me, to make the road narrower, and then like I think was mentioned, like some others, especially when they're living down in that area, and the parking is going to be limited as far as for them, and are they even going to be able to park down in that area, especially when it's during the winter? I think that's probably one of my concerns that I know they probably have addressed some of the other issues, and it's probably, been more beneficial, some of the things they've come up with. But at this point in time, there hasn't been anything changed as far as for this parking issue, or, and in this one way. I feel as though that's one of my main concerns.
Okay. Anybody else? Randy?
No,
Did
I
you
think everyone on the board really has articulated their positions and what they think the positives and the negatives are of this project. And, you know, I think it's just time that we've all, you know, we know what's happening. The project, in my opinion, is still a little bit too much for what they want to do there. And I have major concerns, like everyone else, on many of the issues that were brought up. So really, I'm ready, you know, so that's all I have to say.
Lou?
Just one last comment point I forgot to mention just now was I remember last draft, one of my biggest concern was the loss of access to the riverfront. From this sketch, first of all, I was really confused. I thought it was no longer a U shape until someone really pointed out to me that it's still a U shape. And the 3D rendering from it does look nice, but I kind of doubt whether that's really to scale, because the green space, the space between the riverfront and the building seems to be not to scale, not as wide as the whatever they measure as 15 or 12 feet. In a way, I could imagine myself as a planner myself, if I walk down that riverfront, if it was completely built and nicely as a walk passage, I see a door, a wall, a parking street, and then a parking structure. That is another thing. I don't understand the designer or the idea of building this project. Why it doesn't have like facing a river kind of idea? It's really nice location to face the downtown streets, main streets, and facing the riverfront, and that could add a lot to the public of this project. One of the main things, I think all of these concerns, including public parking and other concerns, is really the design of this project not taking into consideration of the surroundings, surrounding properties, other owners, and surrounding assets, nature, and public needs. So I think that's one thing I have been feeling really mind-boggling with this project. Again, I'm with you, Tim. I am pro-development, but we want to have a project that's county-wide positive development.
Right.
Okay.
Tom?
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion? Because it sounds like we are all focusing around pretty near the same comments.
Right, well, I have a few comments that are different.
Oh, okay. But may I suggest that we vote on comments and then vote on, if we can do this, and then vote on whether we approve or disapprove? Because I think we're focusing on pretty much the same comments, but I don't know if we're full agreement on, you know, as I'm here listening to people.
Right.
You know, I don't know if we're centering on approval or disapproval at this point.
I wouldn't say that you would want to do it that way. I would make a, you know, you might want to hear from the applicant and the city at this point. You had some questions they might be able to give you some answers to.
I'd like to speak first.
Okay.
All right. One of my concerns is the property, snow removal, and what's going to happen with the snow. Is it going to be pushed to one side of the parking lot? Is it going to be taken away? What is going to happen with that? My question was, who is going to make sure the time limits are followed? Since it's not a city parking lot, it shouldn't be the city that's checking to make sure that the people stay within their parking time. I'm worried about whether there's enough parking in the garage for all the vehicles. Most family have 2 vehicles, and lately the vehicles are very large. The size entrance to the parking garage is 24 feet, but when it gets into the garage, it narrows down to 22 feet. So that's 11 for each lane. And that's not enough for a big truck or a big car to turn around. 40% of is set for small vehicles, but small vehicles is not what's happening right at the present time. My concern was with the truck parking, the trucks backing up, and the pedestrians having to walk behind, could be very dangerous. I would like to know how it's going to be settled if there's disputes. Right now, we haven't heard a way in which anything is going to be settled. And to me, there is nothing in there for the city or for the county in terms of being able to have relaxation or some type of an activity or things where something can be done. And my biggest one is that we as a board have never approved anything that was not in the final form. And this is certainly not in the final form. So from that standpoint, I think that it needs to be in the final form for us to see and look at to make a decision. That's it for me. So
Any other board members want to say anything? I think we should let the applicant and the city just answer any questions they think they could answer out of all that.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Charlie Gottlieb here on behalf of Prime, who is actually the applicant for the site plan application that is before you. I tried to write down all the comments that I heard. I'm going to start off by stressing a point that I feel very strongly about, that the board should take very seriously whether or not this is of a local consideration. We're now getting down to details of the site plan that include internal access ways of the basement for the residents. Things of that nature certainly, in my mind, cannot be a county-wide impact. And I would suggest that to the extent the county does have a planning board council, you reach out to that council to seek advice. I tried to reach council, but I did not hear that there was one. So I think a conversation of just because this is in a county seat doesn't make it of a county-wide significance. The general municipal law lists what should be considered. And we're now getting into details that are not. Second of all, there was a lot of talk about Durkee Street being changed to one way. Prime and the site plan application has no control over that. That is a function of the city and the city only. This board does not have jurisdiction to opine on whether or not that gets turned into a one-way street or not. Prime doesn't even have jurisdiction to examine whether or not that gets turned into a one-way street or not. I know Matt from the city is here. Maybe he can talk a little bit about that. Related to parking, which is obviously an issue. Again, the matter before you right now is the site plan application. The PUD regulations allow us to come into the planning board with an alternate calculation of parking. This is a mixed use development, so it's very hard to examine, what's gonna go in there. We don't know what's gonna go in there. But we can examine it from a worst case scenario. We can also look at what has happened in the past. What is Prime's experience in the past? What are other municipalities that have already gone through this urban revitalization quite successfully? What have they done? Let's look to see what they've done so that the city of Plattsburgh doesn't get stymied with a parking lot forever. So what we've done is we looked at prior uses. We've come up with a calculation that we feel as though this works. We put it before the planning board. We put it before the city council. The Chazen companies just reviewed our parking calculations, and in the city council's amended secret finding statement, certified that under a worst case scenario, there will be sufficient parking on the site. Now, there has been question of that, certainly. That is one of the major components of the opposition, is the parking. But we have not yet seen a report that says our suggested parking does not work. To the contrary, we've only seen reports that have been studied in the SEQRA record that say that parking calculation works. So we have looked at parking. Parking is in the it's in the documents that's been submitted. The parking demand that we've put forward is 226 parking spaces for our development. We will be providing 50 additional parking spaces, and Turner Bradford is on the line, project engineer, correct me if I'm wrong. Those public parking spaces will be enforced and operated by Prime. So to the extent you, Mr. Chairman, had questions about enforcement, those will be enforced by Prime. Prime has maintenance and personnel on site at all times to take care of that, and they will be managed in that way. As far as disputes go, I think I heard, Mr. Chairman, you talk about disputes.
Right.
You know, are you talking about internal conflict disputes for parking purposes?
Any kind of dispute that may occur because of the plan.
So I guess I don't fully understand the question, but to the extent there is a dispute, whether it's over a parking space or over access, whatever the case may be, you know, that's handled internally between the parties of a dispute. You know, that's not certainly in the purview of an approval resolution. And again, I also hear members' concern over public access. And I don't know how this saying goes, but you can't, you know, lose the forest through the trees or the trees through the forest. Right now, we have a parking lot with no waterfront access. There is zero safe waterfront access. No public, no tourist coming into the community is able to access your waterfront at all. This project, through the facilitation of this site plan, will likely result in public access to a river walk that is going to go right through Prime's development. So we are, and I disagree when we say we haven't been providing public access. We are creating the only public access that will exist there. As far as snow removal, Matt and Turner, maybe once I'm done, you guys can talk about snow removal. Delivery. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. You know, I have quite a list here. One of the things another thing that was brought up was, you know, what's it going to look like as we walk through the Riverwalk? We heard that concern. We heard that concern from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we heard it from this board. We pulled the building back to mitigate that concern. But we all can't lose sight of the fact that we are in the city of Plattsburgh. This is an urban environment. We've submitted documentations of similar urban environments, for example, I think Austin, Texas, and others. And I've made reference to the village of Port Chester in New York, where these built developments are right on waterfronts. And you know, you're not going to have people enjoying and walking the waterfront unless you have somewhere for them to live. So I respectfully request that the board not lose sight of the fact that we are in an urban environment with zero public access to the waterfront currently. Without this project, you know, you might see that lot stay vacant for some time, which would be quite a sad event. But Matt and Turner, I'd leave it up to you to maybe talk a little bit about the snow removal, because that was a concern that was brought up by a few different members.
Turner, would you like to talk about snow removal on the site, and then I can discuss snow removal and snow parking from the standpoint of downtown as a whole?
Sure. Yeah, on the site, I think as Charlie said, the parking lot will be maintained by Prime, and that includes snow removal. There are areas proximate to the parking lot that have been identified for snow removal, but anything that is not capable of being stored there will be removed offsite. That is something that Prime does at other properties. And, it'll be disposed of in accordance with all, state and, federal, state, and local regs, however that gets done. I guess the other thing I would just quickly mention that I had on my list is the drive aisles. They are, 22 feet within the garage. I mean, we'd love to have 24. We shortened up and tightened up the building, brought it in to be in compliance with zoning setbacks to provide that extra open space on the, Durkee Bridge and the Riverwalk. So there's almost only so much width within the building, but 22 feet is something that we have experience providing in parking garages. In fact, the Hamlet that we've used as the example, Prime operates that, I believe, with less than 22 feet of a drive aisle. And that's something that the planning board, it has within its purview the ability to amend parking dimensions, and has and does do, has done in the past, and certainly even below 22 feet. So it's certainly something that we're comfortable with proposing, and we wouldn't propose it if we didn't think it could work.
There's just one more thing before I forget. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned a plan being in the final form.
Yes.
This is our final form. Anything more final than this would be approval. And this board, we would require this board to act before a planning board can consider approval. So I assure you that this is the final plan.
Yeah, and I would just
You're saying
reiterate that as the
final plan, and yet not everything is really spelled out.
I think one of the problems that we were seeing was the underground parking lot. That has concerns, I think, because of the drawing itself. Personally, I think it should get completed as at least to engineering standards where we could say that an engineer would stamp that. We basically don't know the dimensions of the walls, and everything is drawn at pencil thickness. So it causes a problem when you're trying to imagine that it's going to work if the walls aren't taken into consideration.
So yeah, I see what you're saying now. This is a site plan review. This is not a building permit review yet at this point. And again, I hate to repeat myself, but the engineering of the actual building itself, I would find hard for it to be argued that that is a countywide impact, along with the basement of the building itself.
I guess the reason that it becomes an issue is that the parking that's off-site especially is at question. If this underground parking lot doesn't work, the people can't park in it. So we want to make sure that people can go in that parking lot and use it and not be discouraged from using it. So that's basically why I think that's being looked at.
Right.
And I think part of it is you've gone through different boards, and now you made setbacks that made the other boards happier, and had to work inside of a smaller area. And I don't know that they would be happy about it if they knew that the parking would be tighter. Maybe they are, I don't know, but it's certainly more of a concern unless you can indicate clearly that these spaces work. And there's dimensional problems in there right now, the way it's drawn. So it's part of what I noticed is, like, for example, on the surface lot, the handicap spaces are 8.5 feet. It looks like they can't be that narrow. They have to be 9 feet by the Americans with Disabilities Act. It looks like you need 7 spaces now because you're between 200 and 300 parking spots. So things like that just don't seem like you've gone through the whole list. And that's why it's difficult to easily approve a project when it's missing so much. And it does affect how it affects the outer area, because if there's not enough parking in this facility, that means it spreads out to the other surface lot and beyond. And I think that's, personally, as a planner looking at this project, my biggest concern is about the underground parking not being potentially drawn correctly, and the backing of vehicles in front of the doorway, which I was hoping you could explain more of how, is that the main entrance to the facility, that exact spot where the backing is?
I'll let Turner, you know, I don't have my engineering degree handy, so I'll let Turner talk about the design of the basement garage of this specific building and the parking spaces.
Yeah, I mean, we've dimensioned the parking in the basement, you know, using the plans that we've coordinated with the architect. So, I mean, I don't know what else we would do that we haven't done for laying out the parking in the basement. In terms of I think the other question you're asking is the loading area, is the loading dock?
Yes. Is the entrance, the main entrance for residential, in that same location? Because we can't see where it is on the site plan.
No, the main entrance, so all of the residential now is in the very northeast corner of the building. So there are two entrances to the residential spaces, and the main entrances would be along the exterior walkway on the north face of the building and the off of the river walk in the northeast corner. That is where you would enter. Essentially, you would enter the residential space in the northeast corner of the building.
Okay, so you walk all the way along the front of the building. Say if you park in the surface lot, you walk out along the front of the building to the northeast corner.
Yeah, if you were to park in the surface lot, you would walk, probably walk up the sidewalk along Durkee Street until you got to the corner of Durkee and Bridge. And then you would walk under the covered walkway along the north face of the building to the residential entrance in the northeast corner.
Okay.
Would you say that most of the residential parking, or most of the people that would live there, would park in the underground garage?
I would say that.
So they would mainly enter from stairways and elevators from the garage in general, and they wouldn't park in the surface lot as much. That would be mainly for customer parking to the residential, or I mean the commercial?
Correct. Or, I mean, you know, 2/3 of that lot is, you know, available public parking.
Okay, Lou, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, should we respond to the applicant's comments or their responses? Because I feel like a lot of our insights are being overlooked and focused on some detailed comments on the detailed plan, which is only because they're too alarming. It doesn't mean that the county-wide concerns that we spoke about should be overlooked. The property on the other side, the surrounding and the overall parking public space, I still strongly think, and this is a county-wide issue. And the reason why we're looking to some of the details is because it's too alarmingly insufficient. And that doesn't mean that all the other comments we have about the county-wide concern should be overlooked. The second comment is about the one-way streets. It's true that Prime doesn't have control over that, but you put that specifically in your site plan. And that's one of the preconditions for you to take into consideration or calculation of your street parking and your only loading, which is the backing of the truck we just talked about. So you can't say this is part of our plan that makes our number this and that way and making only loading possible, and then say this is out of our control, we're not doing that. And that's so not true. And the third thing about the public access, it's not true there's zero public access. It's just the waterfront walk is not completed, but the access is the full parking lot. With this project, so is Prime building the Riverside walking? If you're not providing the access, okay? Your access, only provision of your access is that 10 feet wide walk between your building and the parking lot. You're not providing public access. That's a wrong statement. And about PUD parking, it does allow you to do alternative calculation, but a large part of it is based on shared parking. For example, there was a dentist that had parking in the daytime, and they have shared commercial parking at nighttime. That's a different story. And your number is based on reduced size of parking space, reduced size of the waste going into the parking garage. You're defining that everyone or the residents who need to live here and use this parking garage, you have to have a compact or subcompact cars. And that's gonna be controversial. And that calculation, PUD does allow alternative calculation based on your specific project, but there are still rules. Okay, can't say that it's allowed and you can just come up with your number. There are details, and that's why there are so many alarming concerns from the public and questions whether this is in this final form.
Okay. You want to say?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Sheridan. I also just want to reiterate what Louis just said too. My strong opinion is that this is a county-wide impact. Like, I don't want to sound like a broken record either, but all of our services are located in downtown Plattsburgh. The Social Security Administration, the Department of Health, Department of Social Services, Office for the Aging, many people from the whole county come to that area of the city for their services. And if this project makes it any less efficient for these people to get their services, that is a county-wide impact. And I know some of the details we're discussing might be small details, but it is the overall impact of the project. Durkee Street be turned into one way wouldn't be happening if this Prime project wasn't occurring. Also, that one of my concerns I brought up was the private parking lot of the 50 spaces for public use. I don't see how that's not going to turn into a overflow parking for this. And when the commercial space gets filled in, hopefully, if this project were to go through, this commercial space, I want to see buildings and more opportunities for jobs downtown. But if this is a net loss of parking spaces, like Tom even mentioned before, he wants to see a net plus of parking spaces. I just don't see, if we get a big busy restaurant or a brew pub down there or brewery or anything like that, where people get to park, we're already losing spots as a whole on this project. And if it's taken up by some of the residents, it's even worse. Those are just my concerns. I know some of the Prime representatives mentioned that, this is really just a local issue. I really strongly disagree with that as being a local issue. And that's basically all I got to say right now.
Okay, this is definitely not a local issue. This definitely has an impact on the county, and that's what we're deciding on. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? If not, I want to take a vote.
Len, I would like the opportunity to speak on behalf of the city before a vote is taken. I'm sorry,
Who's
Mr.
that?
Chairman.
That's Matt Miller from the Community Development Office.
What do you want to speak on?
Parking, a few of the concerns that the board members raised on that.
Well, we're not going to go back and forth contradicting each other as to whether it's right or wrong. You
So you're
said
not
what you
going to
wanted to
give me an
say,
opportunity
we
to
said
speak?
what we wanted to say and what our view is. So no, I'm not going to take
Well,
it.
I
I'm
would-
going to go ahead and call for a vote.
I would let Matt describe what they have gone through a little with the parking study that they've done.
All right.
Can I say something before Matt begins? I just have a quick question for him on the parking.
Sure.
Hey, Matt, the parking lot that's going to be given to Prime, the 50 spaces, is Prime in perpetuity going to have to keep that as a public parking spot?
Yes, the draft easement agreement that the city has put together with Prime does make those 50 spaces available to the public in perpetuity.
But they're the ones who are going to have control over enforcement in there, I think I heard Charlie
Right.
say.
That is correct.
So that's kind of a little bit of an issue with me, that they're going to have enforcement over their own parking lot with, of people, they can easily give preference to their paying customers, basically.
All right,
Okay.
Glenn, just to detail in a little more about the city's downtown-wide parking plans. And Glenn, would you allow me to share my screen? Thank you.
Sure. Let me,
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, this is a summary from the recent traffic and parking impact study that was completed as part of the city's amendment to the statement of findings. This was just adopted by the council last week, and it details changes to the conclusions of the original finding statement as they relate to parking, as they relate to traffic, and to the fiscal impact. Now, looking at this table here, this shows you the existing public parking supply downtown, which is this 820 space figure. That's on-street and off-street parking. The peak public parking demand, and this was based on over 50 public parking counts that my office conducted over the course of 2019. It's 542. So right now, if you're looking at peak occupancy, the number of unused parking spaces in downtown is 278. Now, this is the modified program. This is what we're talking about now with the changes that Prime recently made. The public parking supply is going to be reduced by 19 spaces within the special assessment district, that core 12 square city blocks in the center of downtown. The peak public parking demand is going to go up by 10 spaces because elsewhere in this report, it describes if every single use within Prime's proposed building had maximum parking usage at the same time, which of course is not a realistic possibility, it would take up all of the parking there and potential spillover into the SAD of 10 spaces. So that's how you get from 542 here to 552 here. Now, even with that, you are left with 249 parking spaces within the special assessment district, within downtown, that are not being used. Now, that's a utilization rate of about 69%. Based on industry standards, municipalities would start to look at adding new parking when you reach a threshold of 85% peak utilization. So we are far away from having to think about that, and that's proof enough that within the downtown there is more than an ample supply of parking to meet all the city's needs now and in the foreseeable future. One of the other questions was on snow ban parking and how that would work. As I'm sure several members of the board are aware, currently when there is a snow emergency, the city will close down half of the Durkee Street parking lot, and we will plow the other half and allow for the public to park there. And then the following day, we will plow the other half of the Durkee Street parking lot, opening up to the public so they have access to the entire lot. Once the Prime project is completed, the city will have 4 public off-street parking lots within the downtown, within a few blocks of the existing Durkee lot. Now that's the Arnie Pavone Memorial Parking Plaza, which we're building now, the City Hall Place lot right next to the Pepper, the Broad Street lot across the corner from DSS, and the Court Street lot right next to Olive Ridley's. Now, between those 4 parking lots, there's going to be about 250 spaces. And this was a recommendation that was made by the city's Parking Advisory Committee, on which the Assistant Superintendent of Public Works sits as a member. And nobody knows more about the problems involved with plowing the city streets than he does. And we determined that with the new configuration, we could basically replicate the existing snowband parking system in those different lots. So rather than having half of the Durkee lot closed off and having the other half available, we would simply plow 2 of these lots the first night and allow the public to park there. And then the second night, we would plow the second 2 lots, essentially recreating what we have with the Durkee lot now, just with the lots that we'll have to use in the future. So he's comfortable with it. The Parking Advisory Committee was comfortable with it. The council is just waiting on action by the various boards involved before taking a final action on these recommendations.
Okay, thank you. All right. Tom?
Matt, of those, all those parking spaces, how many of them are on Turkey Street realigned?
So if you're talking Durkee Street one way, I
Turkey
believe
Street
it's-
one way. How many do you gain by making Turkey Street one way, I guess, is the
I
question.
believe between 15 and 25. I don't recall the
Okay,
exact
so if
number.
we lost those,
I think it's
we would
like,
still be at 65% then, roughly.
Yeah, we would actually have to lose over 120 existing parking spaces beyond what's illustrated, but beyond what I just illustrated in order to hit an 85% threshold.
Then I guess we're back to the question, if that is all we would gain by making Turkey Street one way, why make Turkey Street one way?
It was part of the city's one-to-one parking replacement plan. It was an important part of the planning stage. I'm not going to pass judgment on, the necessity of it or
I
not.
am.
Yeah. But if it's, I'm not sure how the board can address that because technically it is not part of the site plan. It's currently under review. But the
It's
city's
hard, I
position is
think-
that one-way Durkee Street will work. It will add beneficial parking. Beyond that, I'm not sure what I can
Yes.
say at this point.
It will add beneficial parking, but at a great cost. And so that's,
Okay, I think it's time that we voted. We're getting close to the hour, so I would like to take a vote. Everybody's had the opportunity to talk. How do you want to do this?
well, somebody
Roll
needs to
call.
make a motion.
Okay, who would care to make a motion? All right, Frank?
Considering,
Lou, go ahead.
Lou, go ahead. I can't see you.
well, considering the comments and concerns I have, and I am still baffled by the claim that it's already in its final form with all this many issues unsolved, and we will have to vote. First of all, I don't think it's a local issue. It's a county-wide issue, and I would make a motion for disapprove.
Okay, a second?
Before we do a second, I think, should we do a disapproval or approval, whatever the board wants, with comments of why?
Let's
Right, that's what we've been doing.
So, Louis, do you want to say why or put some comments in that motion?
I haven't said enough yet.
Well, just so it's on the record here is.
It does need to be as a part of your motion.
I think that's what
even though
happened
you-
the first time happened with this, when it came across us, there was a lot of comments that weren't made at the final motion that we really wanted in there that kind of got overlooked, I think.
Yeah,
So-
but so if I would need to add the comments, first of all is the negative impacts that it has on the surrounding or adjacent properties, which is part of the county-wide concern I have, and which has been my concern of the public access. I would like to have the other board members to add to this comment list because everyone has been chiming in. The negative impact on adjacent properties, the not taking into public access into consideration or public use into consideration. I think many of the concerns people have on the more detailed design of the plan, of the site plan. I know it is part of the detailed site plan, but that's kind of part of my argument for this is not in the real final form, as one of my main concern. And
Looks
the
like they're gonna vote. Yeah, they're gonna vote.
Okay. Anything else, Lou?
I need to have an exhaust list of comments. This is so many of them.
Yeah,
If you want
yeah.
to mention the primary words,
The primary word, yes.
then we
okay.
can discuss it after if you wanted to do that and,
yeah,
add them to your motion.
right, okay. I also spoke about the one lane street. Yeah, I think that's those are my comments.
Okay, how about backing up to the loading dock?
Yeah, that's part of the concern was the Durkee Street design.
Right. Okay,
Major safety issue.
Tim, you're seconding it?
So negative, of course it's not negative.
It sounds like we're getting
Whoever
some
is
back.
on here that they need to mute.
Yeah, we're getting some background chatter.
Yes,
I think I got them.
okay.
Was John going to say something additional before we started talking? Or Frank, I mean, not John.
No,
No. Okay. Yeah, I'll second Louis' motion with a comments of, yeah, I think we still have some unresolved parking concerns overall. It is a county-wide impact. I think there's potential or likelihood this project goes through the way it is right now to make people receiving services from county services less efficient, such as social services and the nearby county buildings. And yeah, I don't know those parking numbers, but it just doesn't make sense if we're having 100 apartment buildings downtown. That's not going to increase parking need downtown. So I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's take a roll call vote because I can't see everybody, so I don't know.
Okay. Let me grab this. Okay, Leo,
Aye.
disapprove, yes. Okay. And we have Tim,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes,
Tom,
No, while I agree with some of the comments, I don't feel they rise to the level of disapproval.
okay.
So I'm voting no.
Frank,
I'm gonna vote no also.
let's see. Got him in the room here, Steve.
I'm gonna vote yes.
And Gary. Gary voted no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And Randy, if you're still out there. Maybe muted.
Okay, I guess he's not on, so,
Okay, so right now we don't have enough to pass a disapproval. So it was 4-3. And if Randy had voted, it wouldn't be enough still. So does someone want to make a different motion? Or talk about
no.
why they would vote a different way?
I think we're gonna have to leave it at that. I don't think anybody else is going to change their vote. So,
Is that true? Is everybody, so for example, Tom, Frank, and Gary do not believe it's a negative countywide impact, or do you want to make a different motion?
I don't want to make I just think that when he presented the parking breakdown the way it is, it seems like it is addressing a lot of the concerns that we had as a county.
Okay,
With the snow removal and the fact that the way they were gonna, I assume the study was a legitimate study, so.
does anybody want to make a motion for approval?
Could go through the motions and make a motion for approval, but I doubt it will go anywhere.
Well, it's worth trying, because if you don't try it, you don't know.
Right.
So,
Well, I'd make a motion for approval with comments.
okay. So we have a motion for approval with comments.
we need,
And what would the comments be? All the things that have been brought up essentially that you're concerned about, or?
Yeah, might as well, with special emphasis on Durkee Street, not reverting to one way. Sorry, Matt.
Second.
I'll second your motion with the comment, supporting your comment.
Okay, so this is a second for an approval just with comments. Okay. I'm asking Gary I'm going to take unless there's more discussion, I'm going to take a roll call vote for approval with comments. Okay.
You're asking for approval for what?
The project is approved with comments about the concerns people have.
Okay,
If you,
I was on the understanding that that it is a countywide impact, but was actually wrong then, because by saying no, it was in favor of Prime, but I'm not, as far as that.
I've got that.
Okay.
So the motion now is for approval with comments about the issues that people have brought up, which we can discuss more. But basically, when there's comments, an approval allows the project. The comments are just about concerns that you have, if that's what you want to do. So we have that motion in a second. So now we have to take a roll call vote. So it's approval
Who
with
that is
comments.
you're talking to? Glenn?
she's talking to Gary.
It's because Gary can't talk on the phone the way it's set up very well. So if he would come around, he could talk to you directly off my microphone.
Because I overheard him saying no, that was when he was voting, that was not in favor of the project.
That's correct the first time.
Yes, so do we register his vote in the wrong way?
I have it down as a no on that first run.
So no in terms of no to my motion or no to the project?
He agreed to disapprove the project. Well, let me ask him again.
We could unmute. I think, Glenn, I think you're
So-
muted.
Okay, yeah. So come here, Gary. You were voting to, well, the motion was to disapprove. And what did you vote? You motion yes to disapprove?
Right.
Okay, yes to disapprove. So that makes the vote 5-2. And that's still not enough to
No,
disapprove it?
right.
I just want to make sure of his opinion. Okay, thank you.
Yes, that was confusing.
Okay, so now we're taking a vote as to whether to approve it.
Right.
Okay, so Gary is saying no.
Well, no, I haven't asked him yet. So
Okay,
come over closer so you can just talk to the microphone. It's right there. Gary, do you make the motion is to approve. Do you vote yes or no?
For the prime.
Approve the project with comments.
No.
So the vote is no for that from Gary. Okay, Steve, he's in the room here.
My vote is no also.
Okay. Frank,
Well, I voted yes.
okay. And Tom is a yes.
Yes.
Trying to look through my list here. Sheridan,
no,
Tim? This is a
No.
vote to approve.
Well, just had to unmute myself. No.
Leo?
No.
Okay, so that did not pass. Does anybody have any other motions they want to make?
Actually adjourned.
Can we forward the comments? Even though we can't forward a decision?
You can, but you
They
would
can
have
ignore
to
them.
agree to just send comments. And that hadn't happened. So
We need a
it would have
motion to do
be
that?
A motion to just send comments would be similar to a local issue. Or you can say you believe it has a countywide concern and these are your comments. But that is not making a
It really
motion.
carries no weight.
Right.
That means
I
I'll
think we
make
need,
that motion I'll make the motion that we forward comments with no decision. Since we can't come to one.
Okay. One thing we could do is basically give the minutes of the meeting to the city. And that will have most of this described in there. Is that all right with you?
I'm good with that.
I think it's better than trying to make a motion for this.
right,
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of awkward, isn't it?
Yep.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
my question would be, this is a big concern because of the online meeting and technical issue and can't see people's face. I mean, we used to have a much better way of making motions and decisions. My question is, besides approval and disapproval, any other motions that we can do other than simply forwarding comments? Because I don't think that says enough about the county-wide concern. I have a problem with that. I have a big problem with that.
I think the way that it would have to be is you would have to make another motion for disapproval and get a majority to, or you could make a motion for approval with a modification. You'd have to have a quorum to say whatever those comments would be.
Well, maybe I didn't make my comments clear enough in the first time when I made the motion.
Yeah, I just have to say that, the motions have failed. The board has
I
spoken.
have the right to come up with a different motion.
Yeah, she does have the right to come up with more motions. It's
that's right.
basically, it's whether or not one will be passable, right?
So
So there's,
I think the thing which I really have concern with simply forwarding comments is that if they put in front of the board in the current form with so many questions and issues and alarming safety concerns, basic safety concerns, and calling it final form, I doubt if a comment, a list of comments, would make any difference to the final draft of the site plan. And I do not think it's reasonable or it's acceptable simply forwarding those comments that doesn't carry anything. And I would like to make a motion to disapprove, mostly to hold them responsible for making the changes necessary to address all these issues. We have commented so many on the concerning, alarming concerns. And the disapproval, again, I'm not against development. I want to hold them responsible for coming up with reasonable, safe solutions before we say comment to the city board. And
My apologies, but this is Randy. Can you guys hear me now?
hey,
Yeah.
Randy, yeah, we didn't get your voice.
I have no idea how that happened, but needless to say, I got back in, so I'm here.
Okay, so
Hello.
Randy
I'm
needs
sorry about
to
that.
vote on the motion of disapproval and approval. So we'll
well,
start with the disapproval.
there were, so Randy, did you hear, you were hearing all of it or how?
Yes, I heard everything. Yes, I
Okay.
did.
So you
So
just
this
got
is the
muted
motion
possibly.
to-
Okay,
I know I went the mute back and forth about 6 times. Well, whatever. In either case, the first motion is to disapprove.
Correct.
yes, so,
I did say yes to that.
okay.
Now it carries.
So that carries 6-0 or 6-1, 2,
6-2.
2.
6-2.
My apologies.
No, it's
No, it's
not
all right.
any-
That's why I feel so frustrated with all these technology.
I would
And-
respectfully request that this board also engage in the county attorney to confirm the process that was set forward this evening. We do object to that process for the record and the way it
Well,
was
I think
handled.
the whole meeting is recorded, and we did have Gary on camera making his vote, and we do have Randy saying his name, confirming his vote.
Sure. So for the protection of this board, you should have your legal counsel look into the proceedings and the process.
We'll do that.
We can do that.
Yeah. Okay. So unless there is something else, we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move it.
Okay. Second.
Randy
Right
will
here.
second that.
Okay. Randy. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Okay, so yeah, no one opposed it here, so.
Everybody have a good week.
Yeah, you too.
All right, bye.
All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Have a good time.
Bye.